What the hell was that? Were you posturing at me?
Flag on the play.
That's taunting. I didn't like the way you kind of lunged forward toward me in a way that felt aggressive and demeaning. But
I didn't say anything. How do you know what I was doing?
You could see it in your laugh that it was aggressive and unacceptable. That's 15 yards, and I think the show is over.
The show is over. We lose.
That's Dionne Miller. I'm Dan Wiederer. We're trying to put ourselves in the shoes of Tony Corrente and Cassius Marsh. Monday Night Football. Controversial moment. Fourth quarter. Close game. Things got wild. Dionne, what the heck?
The fact that I know the referee's name and it's become such a household name bothers me more than the moment itself. That man was on TV more than the Bears offense on Monday night. And it was in that moment, that taunting call was so unnecessary in a key moment in that game that truly, I believe, swung the outcome. And it didn't even know what Cassius Marsh was saying. Still trying to figure out who Cassius Marsh is, by the way. But, against his former team, obviously his emotions were high, but he didn't do anything inappropriate. And then the contact that they had, it was just a bizarre moment that turned a progress report for this offense into this weird kind of like a side story. It became a sideshow.
For sure, it was a side drama. And it was a side drama because it wasn't an isolated incident, right? There were so many questionable calls throughout that game, many of them going against the Bears and in favor of the Steelers. I say all the time that 49 times out of 50, when fans accuse the refs of stealing a game from their team, I roll my eyes and say, get over it. It's sports. There are going to be bad calls. Monday night was the one out of the 50 where you say, that felt odd. Everything about that game felt odd. I was raising my eyebrows in the third quarter when the Bears score a touchdown from the 1 yard line on a Justin Fields pass to Jimmy Graham, and all of a sudden there's a flag out and they're calling a cut block on James Daniels, and then you wheel back and you watch the replays on the TV above you in the press box, and you see not only did James Daniels not get outside the tight end box, which is what is required to call that penalty, but he didn't even make contact with TJ Watt, and so there was nothing on the play that was a penalty. It took 4 points away from the Chicago Bears in a key moment of the second half, and away we went. Then we get to the fourth quarter, and you get this key sack for the Bears, right? I think it was 3rd and 8 at the time for the Steelers, and they lose 7 yards. The play's over. I'm writing down in my notebook, okay, Bears going to get the ball back.
Here we go.
Punt for the Steelers. They're going to be down 3 with the ball, with a chance to rally on the road with Justin Fields taking the field. And then all of a sudden you hear the refs might come on and you're going, when was that flag thrown? Why was it thrown? And as we learn, Cassius Marsh sacks Ben Roethlisberger, takes about 6, maybe 7 steps in the direction of the Steelers sideline rather than the Bears sideline, but really didn't do anything else.
Nothing.
And then, not only that, it wasn't until after he started heading back toward the Bears sideline and took a little butt bump from old Tony Corrente that the flag came out. And you're like, what exactly just happened in this sequence?
Dan, that flag came out with such authority. And what's amazing to me is that he threw the flag without even seeing what Cassius Marsh had done. He saw the back of him. Like it wasn't like he was coming towards him or you could hear him yelling anything. He didn't say anything. It was such an egregious call. And it is one that unfortunately we're going to have to talk about for a little bit here because it comes as they head into this bye week. And you're just like, what just happened there? How do you put that along with the outcome of the game? And it's very hard.
So the blown call against James Daniels cost the Bears 4 points. It took a touchdown off the board, made him settle for a field goal. Cassius Marsh's penalty gave the Steelers 3 points. Instead of punting, they ended up kicking a field goal to go up 6 points on that drive. Right. The game was decided by 2 points. You do the math on this and you tell me whether those calls were not result changing in the course of the entire night and the entire season. Let me peel back the curtain for you on post-game at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. This will be entertaining for the audience because, first of all, the calls were so controversial that Adam Hogue, the pool reporter for the PFWA, had to get on the phone with the league office and then, by extension, Tony Corrente to ask questions, right? And so he asks Tony Corrente about both of the calls we just talked about, the taunt and the low block call. Tony Corrente's explanation on either one of those were not acceptable to me. Number one, on the James Daniels block, he said, I had to judge that there was contact, and I judged that there was contact on James Daniels. There was no contact. Also, he wasn't outside the tight ends box. Shouldn't be a penalty. The Cassius Marsh thing, he says it wasn't because of the celebration, the spinning heel kick that Cassius Marsh does after he gets sacked. And it wasn't because of the bump on his way off the field. It was because taunting is a point of emphasis in the NFL this year. I'm sure you've heard, and I'm sure you've seen other violations, but that was deemed taunting. Now, we get down in the press room and we're kind of sorting through all this. And mind you, on the East Coast, this is past midnight at this point, right? We're in the wee hours of Tuesday morning at this point. And I'm sitting here going, did anybody request to talk to Cassius Marsh? A question I never would have imagined asking 10 days earlier, because Cassius Marsh wasn't on the Bears. He was signed to the practice squad a week ago, then flexed to the active roster over the weekend. We never had confirmation that he was going to talk. I sent a message to Bears PR and said, hey, we're interested in talking to Cassius Marsh if he's available. 10 minutes later in the middle of post game, here comes Cassius Marsh to the brightly lit podium in the post game press conference. We've never met Cassius Marsh. We've never spoken to him before. All of a sudden, he comes through the door in this winter coat with this heavy fur hood, and he's got that long blonde hair. His
hair was disheveled. He looked like he had
fresh out of the shower, right? Like, and he's just getting ready to get on a plane and get the hell out of Pittsburgh. And all of a sudden, they're like, "Hey, Cassius, we want you to go talk about the most controversial play of your career, right? Monday Night Football, the bright lights are on. ESPN is probably broadcasting this live. Can you just walk through that door and go say hello to these people that you've never met before and give them a rundown on this play?" And Cassius Marsh told us that he didn't think anything of the bump on the way off the field, because you run into people all the time running off the field. He said it wasn't until he got to his locker afterwards and saw a clip of Tony Corrente's little whatever he did. And he called it incredibly inappropriate, right?
It was.
And it felt like that. And the whole thing was just bizarre. Right. And then here's credit, he answered all those questions honestly, and he stayed measured. He was trying to make sure that he wasn't going to get fined 5 digits, and then he got out of there. And you said, boy, he handled himself really well in that moment, and I appreciate his candor.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing that I go back to. There were so many unnecessary penalties from the Bears in that game that's why I feel like it highlighted it even more, because it was a moment where they actually weren't doing something wrong, and they were actually finding a way to be successful on the football field and not kick themselves in the foot. And then the refs made it about them and these other things that were going on. That I think even more so why it highlighted it, because this is an undisciplined Bears team. I mean, that was a lot of penalties before we even got to those moments that swung the game, right? Like, that first half was peppered with penalties. And it feels like every week we get one of those unsportsmanlike or something like that from this group, and you wonder when that will end, because that was happening offsides. Like, come on, it's week 9. Like, what is happening?
Here's the one that made me wheel back in my chair in the press box and just go, man, this operation is broken. They take a timeout in the first half because there was alignment confusion, and it's all chaotic, and the play clock's running down, and they burn a timeout because they say, wait a second, this is haphazard. They come out of the timeout and they get called for an illegal formation. How does that happen, right? These are the mistakes that cannot happen for a team with a thin margin for error. I think they were penalized 16 times. I think the Steelers accepted 12 of those for 115 total penalty yards in a game, again, that was decided by 2 points. Now, some of those are debatable. The James Daniels, the Cassius Marsh, Jalen Johnson's pass interference up the left sideline in the second half, where you said, not sure what he did there. Looked like he was covering a receiver. There was a little bit of contact, but it certainly wasn't pass interference. These were all result swinging calls in one way or another, whether the Bears committed, costly penalties on their own, or whether they were called for violations that didn't appear to be violations. Brutal way to lose a game, to go into the bye week on a 4-game losing streak and have to pick the pieces up and figure out where you go from there.
And now every time that Mr. how do you say his last name? Tony Corrente. Every time he's on the ref sheet or the call sheet for their game, everybody's going to be standing at attention, wondering what in the heck could happen next. I mean, it just, I get back to, I just hate that it made it about him. I shouldn't know the ref's name. I shouldn't. And that is what it ended up being. Like, Adam Hoke shouldn't have to call as the pool reporter and get an explanation for things that swung the game. And that's exactly what happened. It's crazy, right? And Tony Corrente and his crew need to have a conversation. I don't care if it's private or not, but the league office needs to say, what the heck was going on in that game? Yes. And how did you miss so many important calls, and what were you doing? The league office put out a video going through a bunch of, high profile kind of controversial calls from week 9. The Cassius Marsh taunt was on there. Perry Fuel on the video said, hey, the player made a motion toward the opposing sideline, and his posture
was unsportsmanlike. And the league has been trying to cut down on that this year. The coaches and the competition committee wanted this taunting emphasis placed into the game. And the Steelers' feelings got hurt. And they got 15 free yards and 3 free points out of it. And then they win. They win a game. And guess what? They're 5-3, and now their playoff hopes are bolstered because Cassius Marsh was trying to have a little fun after a meaningful fourth quarter sack. Go figure.
Against his former team. Like it wasn't. There was
one of 7 former teams, by the way, for Cassius Marsh.
Wonder where he picked up that jacket along the way. No, it's just disappointing, and I don't think he meant anything malicious by it. I think he was even like stunned that they would call that on him, because I don't think that's his personality. Well, not that I know, but like based on his reaction, I didn't think that was kind of like his MO, and I think that's what is even more disturbing, and that's why. Because most of us were like, wow, who is this guy? First of all, and second of all, he didn't really do anything that I guess would be considered taunting. But at the same time, you're Cassius Marsh, right? Like, I appreciate that you're like, you're staring down the Steelers sideline. Like, I can get behind competitiveness, but dude, just your first game, just, go back with your team. Like, just celebrate with the Bears, stare down your teammates and tell them that you showed up. Your teammates that, do you even know their names? Like, you're that new. Just go to your sideline. Like, there's that.
I feel you to some extent there, but man, you in the moment, I mean, these guys are playing a cutthroat sport that has so much competitive blood boiling. You can't control that all the time. And unless he was within 20 feet of an opponent saying bad things about their mothers, I don't call the taunting penalty.
He was closer to Tony, Mr. T. Tony. He was closer to him than he was to any other players.
I cannot tell you how surreal that moment was when Cassius Marsh walked through that door of that press conference room. The first time we'd ever seen him up close. It was like, wow.
Did you all sit around and be like, wait, is that really him?
I mean, you've got like 10 seconds to be like, man, he's actually here. And now we've got to ask some questions. And we threw it at him. He went on Carmen and Yurko on Wednesday morning and said that he heard from a lot of former teammates in Pittsburgh saying, sorry, bro, sorry that happened. That was not supposed to be a taunting penalty. And it's a shame that it was called that way.
Will he still be on the team when we come back from the bye week?
I believe so. He got a sack. That was a big sack.
He got a sack. I mean, he at least gets another game.
And he's got a coat that will help him in the winter that is arriving soon.
I don't know where he got it, but I mean, it was with the hair.
I kind of like the guy already. There's an element of flair and personality here that I'm rallying behind.
Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee, Cassius.
I don't like what you did with your head just there. That looked like taunting there. That was what is this?
There's going to be more flags. Last week I got fined. Now I'm getting flags.
That felt like it was directed at me. This thing, like,
the little shimmy. It wasn't, Dan. I would never.
All right. Well, we'll have more to talk about, and we've got a bye week to enjoy. So thanks for joining us.
See you guys.